Spain's King Juan Carlos went on national television today to announce that he's setting aside his crown after nearly 4 decades on the throne. A king who ushered in democracy, he's handing over to a new generation. His son, Crown Prince Felipe, will succeed him. This dramatic tale starts back in 1939 when the centuries-long reign of the Spanish monarchy was interrupted as the Spanish Civil War brought the fascist General Francisco Franco to power. And he ruled with an iron fist until his death in 1975, when the people of Spain, who had known nearly half a century of dictatorship, were ready for the restoration of the monarchy. And so, a mere 2 days after Franco's death, to cheering crowds, Juan Carlos was crowned the King of Spain. And within 2 years, he had brought political reforms that led to Spain's first democratic election since 1936. More recently, the king's popularity had suffered from a series of royal scandals, and the global economic crisis has plunged Spain into high unemployment and a stagnating economy. King Constantine II knows, like few others, the challenges facing contemporary royalty. He was the last king of Greece before that monarchy was abolished in the early 1970s. And he is brother-in-law to King Juan Carlos. And he joins me exclusively from Copenhagen. King Constantine, welcome back to our program. Thanks for joining me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
So this took everybody by surprise. Your brother-in-law, King Juan Carlos of Spain, after 40 years on the throne, decides to abdicate. Why? Why now?
I suspect, although I'm not a party to his decision, I suspect that he considers that 40 years is quite substantial. And his oldest son is perfectly eligible to take over from him now. And so the difficulty is to find the right moment. I believe that he has done that. He has found the right moment.
What would you say his legacy is?
I would say his legacy is very, very important, that he was instrumental in first keeping Spain out of extremism and keeping Spain democratic. As you well know, he went through a very difficult period to do that. But I was convinced that he would overcome all the difficulties, and he has done that. And at the same time, Spain has evolved enormously well and is a great power in Europe and a power for good.
He had practically a storybook story, really. He was born in exile. It was the time of fascism in Spain. And he went back to Spain when I think he was about 10 years old or so. And he was named by the dictator Franco to succeed him. What was going through your mind as that was going on in Spain? Walk us through that historical moment.
I can tell you that Franco must have been, if we look at the history books, the only historical autocrat who prepared the future of his country. He was not concerned about, you know, after him, the whole place goes to pieces. And so he prepared the succession. And as he himself told my brother-in-law, the King of Spain, that when you become head of state, Spain will be democratic. And King Juan Carlos has not only proved that he kept Spain democratic, but he also made Spain, with the support of the elected government, a very, very strong democratic country for Europe.
Indeed, 2 years after he went back to Spain, he did prepare those first democratic elections after so many years of dictatorship and fascism in his country. And then in 1981, there was an attempted coup. And again, he distinguished himself, the history books will say, by insisting that democracy had to be preserved. Can you walk me through that moment as well? Give us a sense of how that was and how tense it was and how close democracy was to being subverted.
Well, no, there's no question that it was an extraordinarily difficult situation. All these situations evolve enormously quickly. So you have to have a very clear brain and a very clear mind how to deal with it. And you have to have, like he did very successfully, free communications. So he could speak to the commanders of the armed forces, he could speak to the people on television, and that was very important. So they knew, the Spanish people, exactly how the king was thinking, and he never deviated from the most important point, that Spain is democratic and has to remain so. But it was very, very touch and go.
Tell me a little bit about that. Was there a moment that actually he might not have been successful and this coup might have been successful?
Oh, no question about it. I think that if he hadn't shown his firmness and immediate communications with the Spanish people, they might have succeeded. But he went on television, he spoke to the people directly, he spoke to the armed forces directly, and the whole thing just fizzled out when they realized it wasn't going to work. But it was a close-run thing, no question about it.
And so we come to the last several years where the king faced quite a lot of criticism. He is your brother-in-law, but nonetheless, he was criticized at the time that Spain was going through so much austerity, for going on this private trip to Botswana, for going on this hunting trip. And of course, none of it would have been public unless he hadn't been injured and flown back. Did he misstep? Did he miscalculate? Did he somehow get out of touch with the people and the severe austerity they were going through at that time?
It's very hard to judge when you're far away from the actual situation as it evolved. I don't know the details of it, but as I don't hunt myself in Africa or wild animals like that, it's very difficult to judge. But in any case, he got over it. And I don't think he would ever do that again.
And, of course, he also has, you know, a certain amount of scandal to deal with over his own daughter, Princess Christina, the youngest daughter. She's caught up in a tax fraud and money laundering investigation along with her husband. I know they deny it, but all of these punch holes and put knocks in the facade of this monarchy. Is there something that could have been done differently?
You can punch holes, as you said, but she is a fantastic young lady, and I don't believe that she ever would do anything like that. The one thing that worries me a little bit is why does it take so long for the judge to come up with a decision one way or the other? It's just dragging on and dragging on. In a democratic country, you have to have a decision and finish with it. You can't go on and on. It's like as if you're dragging it out on purpose to do harm to the institution. It's very clear.
And do you think that's what's happening, that the system is trying to do a harm to the monarchy?
I suspect that something like that is going on, because in a democracy, you have to come up with a decision. You can't just let it go and drag and drag and drag. And she's a wonderful person, and I don't believe she would ever do something consciously that is illegal.
Given that the world is becoming more and more democratic, and again, your brother-in-law transformed a fascist system into a democracy, but he was a king, he was a monarch, and in many people's views, the monarchy all over the world is an outdated system. How does monarchy exist in a democratic system today, do you think? Is it time for the whole shebang to be outmoded?
That can only happen if the people of the different countries that have a constitutional monarchy don't want it anymore. You know, most of the countries in Europe that are progressive, democratic, had constitutional monarchies at the time. Some of them still have it. And their countries are still democratic and extremely well oriented. I'm calling you from Denmark. Denmark is a very democratic country, extremely well run and very successful. So that can happen in the most Europe, in Belgium, in Holland, they're all the same. It's Norway, Sweden, they all have extremely young people running their countries, and young monarchs who are encouraging in that direction.
King Constantine, thank you very much for joining me.
It's a pleasure to meet you again.